big time news in the world of college football as Billy Napier, the head coach, now former head coach of the Florida Gators, was fired. This is really an interesting one to kind of look at because Napier was hired the same year as Mario Cristobal, so they were very much, pull up the link here so you can see that, these guys were very much attached, both in recruiting, just in terms of comparing what they did with in-state programs. Of course, the 2 games that they played, both won by Miami by 3 scores. Plus, Pete Thamel, there's the tweet, 22-23 in 4 seasons, and Florida's 3-4 this year, coming off a tight win to Mississippi State. One of my picks, actually, on the show with Mike Ryan. Hope you cashed that one. But bye week coming up, so even though they won a close game, decided this was the time to make the move before the inevitable bloodshed against the Georgia Bulldogs, which actually is a game that Florida might win with the way Georgia's been playing defense. That's actually not a given that Florida drops that game. I could see a new coach getting that quick bounce and actually competing with Georgia, potentially beating Georgia. I'm going to watch that game for a potential pick. But Billy Napier won't be there. He was fired. And again, I really think this is significant for Miami just because this was such a head-to-head situation. I mentioned they were hired the same year. I mentioned the recruiting battle. Just specifically, if you look at Miami's roster, you're talking about Mark Fletcher. A lot of people thought he was going to UF at one point. Samson Okalola, heavy buzz to UF. Francis Mawanoa, heavy buzz to the University of Florida. Again, these were all direct head-to-head recruiting battles. Billy Napier versus Mario Cristobal. Josh Moore, who's been playing a little bit. Look on the other side of the ball. Not as many battles now that I think about the other side of the ball. Zechariah Poyser was someone in the portal that they went toe-to-toe with Miami on, but really it was those big guys up front and Mark Fletcher. There were big-time battles on the other side. Gators took, as Jay Campbell notes, Vernell Brown III and Dallas Wilson, 2 extremely talented true freshmen who are making plays right now for the Florida Gators. And I actually want to point this one out because this is an interesting one, which is Darian Coleman, Miami's quarterback commit for the class of 2026. He's not going anywhere. He plays for Orlando Jones. They went to the state championship last year. I saw them take on Malachi Toney in American Heritage. Malachi Toney actually playing quarterback, as you saw for a little bit in that Louisville game. But this was the tweet way back when Miami was really, really going hard at Vernell Brown. You see Vernell Brown there with the Hurricane sweater. There's Darian Coleman with the backpack throwing up the U. He's saying, how's he look, Canes fans? VB3 to the U. Of course, that didn't go Miami's way. Vernell Brown followed his father's legacy at University of Florida, and he's been an outstanding true freshman. Not quite Malachi Toney, but probably the closest thing in terms of true freshman. You could also throw DeCarian Moore over there DeCorian Moore in Oregon as dynamic young players. Vernell Brown certainly in that category. And right here, 7:13 p.m., so basically an hour ago today, Darian Coleman revisits his old post for his old teammate from Orlando Jones with a little and the eyes. So this is a connection that's had a lot of success. Vernell Brown knows that Darian Coleman, if that were to be his quarterback, could get him the ball. Certainly, I think as someone who's ready to play right now, he would have to have some faith in Miami's ability to find a transfer quarterback. He certainly did that with Cam Ward. I think Beck is going to bounce back from this tough day, but has been, a good player. Obviously, has delivered the ball to Malachi Toney, who is someone who Vernell Brown would potentially play alongside. I don't know if he wants to be a slot only. He's someone who could play outside, so I don't think they necessarily bump into each other. But if you're one of these Gator receivers and you're looking at Malachi Toney, who's candidly had more success as a freshman than the higher rate of Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson, maybe you say, hey, I want some of what he's having. As I play these highlights, what I'm watching here is Darian Coleman last year. You know what? Let's pull Vernell Brown highlights. How about that? Let's see both of these guys in the same frame while we speculate. The other name, Dallas Wilson, of course, who is really physical, big ex-receiver that Miami's needed. He's been mercurial in his career as a recruit. You look at what happened when he signed with Oregon. He flirted big time with Miami out of high school, ended up signing with Oregon way out west. And then before he enrolled, he transferred. So it was after signing day. I don't tell you to transfer what, but then he ended up going to the Florida Gators after signing day. This was not a flip commit. He was already signed. So he's a guy who bounces around a little bit, extremely talented. Miami loves the player. I could see if we don't know who's going to jump in the portal, we don't know who's going to get hired at the University of Florida. We'll speculate on those names in a second. But if these names were to enter the portal, I think you could definitely see a connection there. But yeah, here's Darian Coleman, number 4, throwing to Vernell Brown. You can see why Miami's so high on, or was so high on this player. He's also made those plays there he is. He's made those plays on Saturdays for the Gators. There you see. Let's see a couple of these connections here and dream what could be as Darian Coleman hits Vernell Brown. Stephen Aveo says, D, I love you. Maybe you got a little ahead with the January 19th talk. Feels like every game is single elimination. Playoffs are a failure. Definitely agree with that. As far as getting ahead with this January 19th, I mean, some of those, the hype podcast is kind of the deal, but I do think this is a playoff team. And if you don't make the playoffs, you're really struggling. Faith, family, friends, football, basketball, fish. That's a nice little list. Says no more stuffing Billy in the locker. Billy is permanently now in the locker. What's up, Coach Jenko? How you doing? Got Shad in the chat. Jacoby Graggs, go Canes. Canes Cats fired up. Jonathan Crumbly, we're number 9. We'll be okay. A lot of love, a lot of positivity here. I like that. Kevin Dennis saying, Hezzy Kent, definitely one of the current commits. So I'm looking at right now, Vernell Brown, who's already at UF, and potential portal guys. No information will be in the portal. This is just a speculation season. But Hezzy Kent is a guy that's committed to University of Florida. A lot of big schools after him. I think Mario would love to land him. Yeah, we got some late night CanesInSight right here. Spencer saying, let's take some of the recruits. Problem is the recruits aren't that good. I'd rather get some of these guys like Dallas Wilson, J.R. Barr, seeing what I'm seeing. Hopefully Dallas Wilson in the portal to Miami. Canes Cat talking about Stubbs. I don't know if Stubbs would be one that would come back, or if we want him to come back. LJ McCray, for sure. That's a good one. 5-star defensive end from Daytona Beach, who signed with UF a couple years ago. That was the Armando Blunt year, Justin Scott year for the Miami Hurricanes. They were really trying to load up on big-time defensive linemen. That was one of them. He got hurt this year, but Miami could use all the big bodies they can get. That's one, I could see happening. No information. Ben Hanks, big-time corner from Booker T. Washington, Gator legacy, but a Miami native who committed to Florida last year, hasn't played. I'm sure he's watching Frederic and all these guys, perform well, saying I wouldn't mind fitting in there. EJ pointing out raw connection. Yep, Dallas Wilson, a raw Miami teammate of Malachi Toney, so they know each other from there. I mean, that raw Miami team for Coach Duaso, who we had on the show last week, just unreal. Dallas Wilson, Malachi Toney, Calvin Russell, you name it. Drake Kendricks. If we went out, do you like our odds for Charlotte? We'll find out, man. That's a tricky one because you don't know what the other games are, how the other games are going to go. I think if we went out, I love our odds for the playoffs. I think it's automatic. As far as Charlotte, there's some weird tiebreaker stuff that's I can't say I have a firm grasp on right now. I just know ACC tends to ACC, so we got to win. Ask when I take a flyer on Lagway. I would. I'm a tools guy. As long as the tools are attached to good character, I'm a tools guy. I like Lagway. I like Sellers. I like a lot of those guys. Let's see, a lot of comments on the game, which I want to get to in a second here because obviously I know we've done a few shows on it, but we can still talk about it. Let's see. We got Coach Jenko asking about their running back ball. He had a great game, couple games in a row now. He certainly had a great game against Mississippi State, going well over 100 yards. Talented guy that really wasn't used probably as much as he should have been. 231-pound back. I know I was kind of going back and forth with Peter on him, but look, this guy could thrive in Miami scheme. There's no question. He's a true sophomore, so he can't go pro. So if he doesn't like the way things are going, he'd be a candidate to potentially jump in the portal. That wouldn't be impossible. Let's see. Any other comments here on the Gators? So yeah, it's just as we watch these highlights, in terms of Gator coaching potential candidates, the name's going to get the most attention is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, who reminds me a lot of Steve Spurrier, just with the way he likes to talk. That was what Spurrier was known for, the offense. Just a lot of Spurrier to me in Lane Kiffin. And Florida fans loved Spurrier. I can't explain enough how much being around a lot of Florida fans, how much they revere Spurrier. It was like a cult-like thing. It took a little while to accept Urban Meyer and his offense because they were so locked in on Spurrier. I remember Mullen and Urban Meyer that first year, they were complaining about them all the time because they love that Spurrier offense. I just think Lane Kiffin's going to remind some guys about Spurrier. There are some high-profile people in that program, or at least in the administration, boosters that don't want Lane because of his personal problems. Well documented. He had that special where he talked about all of it. Plus, to me, I'm not sure it's a guarantee that Lane would leave. He's having a lot of success at Ole Miss. They've been better than Florida lately by a lot. Florida's last few coaches have not had success. Whereas, like a Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, he had a good run. It had nothing to do with his football, why he's not at Ole Miss right now. So, not a guarantee Lane would leave. If you watch that documentary, he's got family there in Ole Miss and in Oxford. Guys have gone over there to move. It seems like they're just kind of, I believe his daughter goes to Ole Miss. It seems like his nucleus is there and they have everything they need from a resource standpoint. They also passed over Lane twice, so maybe he says F off. A lot of the same people are involved. JD Pickle said, if UF wants Lane, they got to understand he gets the keys and all, not just coaching. I'm sure he knows he got UF over a barrel if he decides to pursue that job. So that's something to keep an eye on. Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri, to me, is one who's been a consistent winner the last few years, built the program the right way, strong trenches, strong defensive line, strong running game. The quarterbacks have been pretty good. They've won games. They haven't gone all the way over the hump, but they produce NFL players, and they really maximize, I think, what can happen in Mississippi, Missouri. He's one, to me, that would be more likely to leave than a Lane. Let me say this. I don't have the inside info on that. I would, if I was Drinkwitz at Missouri, certainly Florida's a major upgrade there. I think Lane has a tougher decision to make, but Drinkwitz would be one that would fit. Jed Fish, the Florida grad, the Washington coach. Question is whether Florida would think he's worthwhile. Washington 5-2, but not the strongest resume at the highest levels for Jed Fish, at least not yet. James Franklin, I think, would petrify me at UF or FSU. I think he would be exactly what they need to get more talent on those rosters. One of the best evaluators in college football and a consistent winner. I don't think Florida would be the one for him, but FSU potentially. There's going to be competition for jobs. Auburn most likely is going to open up sometime soon here with the losses they've taken. LSU could potentially open up with the underachieving after they spent everything on the portal, spent everything on Brian Kelly. That's one I'm keeping a very, very close eye on. Of course, Florida State will be in the mix. A lot of jobs that could potentially come open. And if a Lane goes to Florida, so what does Ole Miss do? Like, there's a lot of musical chairs here. Penn State, of course, I didn't mention. Penn State already open with James Franklin being let go decision. I don't think was the smartest thing in the world. A lot of Kenny Dillingham talk. Big win for him this weekend over Texas Tech, which had been dominant rushing the passer. He would be certainly a target if I'm a UF booster. Arizona State grad, so no guarantee that he would leave. But that's one. Yeah, Wisconsin coming open soon. Rhett Lashley, always a candidate for new jobs. Talking about FSU for him. Arkansas is already open. That's a spot where you can see Rhett Lashley going. He played there. He's from there. So the musical chair is going to be very interesting. I'll talk about Wisconsin opening up. To me, the best fit for Wisconsin would be if Brian Kelly gets fired from LSU. Would Brian Kelly then go to Wisconsin? Who knows what the buyout situation is? Sometimes these contracts have a duty to mitigate, which means you got to go find another job. You can't just sit on the sidelines and collect checks. James Franklin's like that, and then the school just pays the difference in salaries. That's why I think FSU makes sense, because he can go there for kind of cheap, basically the minimum that they need to pay him to mitigate. I don't know what the exact language of the contract is. And then Penn State pays the rest. So that's a pretty good situation for FSU if they want to get a cheap coach for a big price tag without them having to pay the full price tag. And he would beef up their talent quite a bit. Raising Cane saying Kelly could change his accent again. Get a nice Wisconsin accent like that show Fargo. Auburn for Rhett. I think what Auburn is, Rhett Lashley didn't have a good run at Auburn. He was the offensive coordinator for Gus Malzahn, was very maligned there, kind of remade his career outside of that. So that was a low point for him. So I don't know if they'd want to be bringing back necessarily, although he's certainly proven a lot since leaving. Arkansas, to me, makes the most sense for Rhett Lashley, unless he just says they don't have enough resources, they can't win enough. Mike McDaniel going to college after Miami Dolphins fire him. Yeah, he's brutal. Brent Key, kind of similar situation to some of these other ones like Dillingham, where Brent Key is a Georgia Tech alum and they're doing well. So top 10. So is he going to take this opportunity to jump at the best team he could get to, Florida being one of those? Or is he like, I'm doing great at my alma mater, this is where I want to be. Just pay me, Georgia Tech, and see if he can get a raise out of it. Not sure. A lot of talk about Braum. I'd love to see Braum leave the ACC, although I'd hate to see him with the Gators. Very good coach. Again, alma mater, LSU grad. Is he, or sorry, not LSU grad, Louisville grad. Is he going to want to stick around there and just keep doing what he's doing, competing in the ACC, or does he want to go for a national championship at a program that's won national championships before? These are the questions that need to be asked. Yeah, a lot of Jeff Braum in the comments. I think, again, that's the issue. Carlos had enough of Mike McDaniel. Jay Campbell talk about Braum at a place like Penn State. Yeah, so that's the other thing is you're balancing these Florida jobs, these Florida State jobs with an opportunity at Penn State. And that could be something. Ron the Man said James Franklin at Florida FSU would be hell for Miami recruiting. Quickly want to shout out my boys Anajar and Levine accident attorneys. If you or someone you care about an injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Question if Dabo would leave Clemson. I think Dabo is going to stick with it. Although, look, you heard his comments. He was very much like, hey, if you don't want me, I'll win championships somewhere else. So that was kind of an interesting comment. Colin Klein, former quarterback that killed Miami in 2012 with Kansas State. He's the Texas A&M offensive coordinator. That offense is humming. He could be due for another promotion. He's been on the upward trajectory for a while. Zach saying Matt Campbell will be a solid hire. I think Matt Campbell to Penn State makes a ton of sense. Again, I wouldn't have gotten rid of Franklin, but I think Campbell at Penn State would do a heck of a job. Iowa State, he's found NFL players, impact NFL players there. He's won a lot of games. It's a very tough program to win at, historically a terrible program. So I think Matt Campbell has done a really, really nice job, and the timing might make sense now with Rocco Becht out the door, just to say, hey, let's go and let's try to win now. Still a lot of talk about this weekend. Again, we'll get to that here in a second. We definitely talked about it a lot, and we'll talk about it some more. But I want to just get through these coaches because this is interesting to me. Brian Hartline, Ohio State offensive coordinator. Will Stein, Oregon offensive coordinator. Be solid coordinator hires. Look at the coordinator hires that have had success in the highest levels. Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning. So coordinator hires are not the worst idea in the world. I think the difference maybe with those hires is those were already healthy programs when they hired coordinators, whether it was Kirby Smart, again, Lanning, Kirby Smart taking over for Ricks, which was a solid program at the time. Lanning taking over for Mario, and that program was doing a pretty good spot. It won some conference championships. Ryan Day taking over for Urban Meyer. They were even better than with him. I mean, they were rolling. So we'll see. I think if you're a UF or FSU, what would scare me the most as a fan that wants them to struggle is like a program builder, like a James Franklin. That's really what they need, is someone to build their program and their talent back up. Maybe you could short circuit it with a guy like Lane Kiffin and his portal use and his offense. That could be a possibility. He gets attention. Drinkwitz, I think, is a program builder. We saw that at Missouri. Joe B says Indiana and Ewan, they made sure their coach got paid and locked in. Smart on their part. Certainly was. Then Marcus defending Beck. Canes fans disappointing how quickly they start hitting on Beck. Support your boy. Let's go Beck. Now I'm with you. Let's rally behind him. He's our quarterback. I think he's gonna have a really, really good season here. Wouldn't be a podcast without the Jeremiah Smith question. If Hartline decides to leave with Jeremiah Smith, leave OSU as well. It's possible. I don't see it, but that would be a potential sliver. Going to be hard for USF to keep Golish. Yeah, he could be someone who fits in any of these jobs. Florida, he beat Florida this year. Florida State, certainly. I think probably Florida State more than Florida. If I'm Florida, I'm more in that Drinkwitz range or Kiffin range, where it's already a proven SEC winner. I wouldn't want to play around with a G5 guy after a Napier. You probably say the same thing about FSU, but I do think Golish, with the style of offense he plays, maybe a little cheaper than some of the other options, would make some sense. It's going to cost a fortune to get rid of Norvell. Yeah, great point by Jay Campbell. We have not mentioned Clark Lee at Vandy. Someone's going to offer him major money to leave Vandy. I think that's a great, great call. this is somebody who had an outstanding win against LSU. They didn't even rush the field. They knew that they were the better team. A lot of history at Notre Dame. He played, and again, what does this remind you of, right? Some of these other names we've talked about. He played football at Vanderbilt, so he is a Vanderbilt guy. He's had success with them, so maybe he wants to make that kind of a permanent thing. Vanderbilt does win championships in baseball, so could he make Vanderbilt a football program of that caliber if he keeps producing? Who knows? I mean, again, he's an alum, so it's a little different. Kyle saying, Dallas Wilson is my portal target. There you go. Penn State for Clark. That's another one that would potentially make some sense. Some sense. Yeah, I agree with Grizz. These 10-year deals with guaranteed buyouts are crazy. No other sport except college football. I agree. 5-year deals. What are we doing? We got to get this thing taken care of. John L. Will Ken Dorsey ever get a head coaching job? I don't know if he wants to recruit, man. Recruiting is a struggle. Coach Jenko says apparently Al Golden is the next head coach of Penn State. Wouldn't that be something after the first go-around when he was rumored every single time? Yet, I mean, nothing going on. I don't think Cincinnati Bengals are too fond of Al Golden right now. He's had some struggles when it comes to defending at the NFL level. Of course, personnel, what's happening on offense has something to do with all that, but I don't know. Fence Post says his A's are in a tough position. They also often have the same agents as the coaches they're trying to hire. So it's a little bit of a conflict. Sometimes there's maybe a looser connection between the agents, but that always happens. Jordan Roebuck says, OC Dawson needs to make croquetas at Islas Canarias. He is a terrible OC. Pay him $1 million to run the ball up the middle, a dummy. Well, you gave me a nice excuse to talk about Islas Canarias, where they do have very, very qualified servers. I don't know. Listen, I like Dawson, but you can't just put anybody at Islas Canarias. It takes a real culinary talent because it is the number one Cuban restaurant on the planet. 7 different types of croquetas. Medianoche, pan con lechon, vaca frita, all kinds of classic options. You got the soups, you got the pastries, the empanadas, the caños, the bowls, some new stuff there, the cubaritos, some just new twist for the grab-and-go options. Plus, you got coffee, all the classic Cuban coffee options, shakes, juices, desserts, you name it. Cuban, traditional, or avant-garde new. They got it all at Islas Canarias, Cuban Express, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. Thank you for that transition. I appreciate it. There it is. Carla knows. Best croquetas in Dade County. I'd say the best croquetas in the world. Norvell is owed $58 million if fired, per the Tallahassee Democrat. What a life. $58 million. We're going 2-10. Almost 1,000 on. Remember to like and subscribe to the show. I appreciate everybody's support as we go through some of these coaching hires. Desmond Howard saying that Manny Diaz should get the Penn State job. I heard he's well liked there. He did a great job on defense. I'm not sure his head coaching resume is quite up to par as you look at the Duke Blue Devils right now. What's their record here? So if you look at the Duke Blue Devils coming off their third loss this past week, they've had some tough opponents, but ultimately 3 losses: Tulane, Illinois, and now to Georgia Tech. A lot of self-inflicted losses. But look, if you're looking at Manny, there were 2 seasons of Mike Elko, 9-4 and then 8-5. Manny first year was 9-4. We'll see what this 4-3 year becomes. But, I don't know if he necessarily improved the program. Certainly not in the way that Mike Elko did, going from 3-9 to 9-4 his first year. So I think that's one of the issues. Coach Jenko, do we hire Billy as an analyst like Saban would? Billy, really, I think there were some black eyes and scratches from all those recruiting battles. I'm not sure they'd be together there. That'd be a match. Manny Diaz to his alma mater, FSU. That could happen. I would be very pleased as a Miami fan. I don't see that. Zach says, what about Tony Elliott to FSU? If he keeps winning, maybe. I don't know if that's there. FSU is still paying Willie Taggart $20 million for getting fired. Both of our rival schools have been on a string of some bad coaching hires, and can't say I'm upset about it, especially after, for all the complaints we have. We'll go through the Louisville game again, and once we get through this coaching talk. But a lot to be critical of, but at the same time, look at Norvell when he was hired. Billy Napier hired the same year as Mario? Who would you rather be right now? I think that's a pretty easy question. Fran Brown to FSU makes sense, but a similar issue, which is that, you know, his team's like Manny's not doing too hot right now. So I don't know if he's in the position to move to a new team, even though he was hot last year with the talent that they had on Syracuse. So John Gruden love. He was smart to do that Barstool sports thing, because now his name is back in the spotlight. A lot of Dabo talk. I don't see Dabo leaving. I think he's just frustrated. If he made some tweaks, he'd be right back in business. A couple portal tweaks, and I think he would be right back in business.